March 18th, 1944, Aberdeen Proving Ground, Maryland. The morning air carries the sharp smell of cordite and fresh-turned earth as Sergeant James Morrison grips what looks like an ordinary baseball in his right hand. Except this baseball weighs exactly 12 ounces and contains enough TNT to shred a man into fragments. He pulls the pin. The safety paddle flies off. He winds up, just like he did 1,000 times at his high school diamond in Cleveland, and releases. The grenade arcs through the Maryland sky. 3 seconds into flight. 4 seconds. The impact fuse should arm at 5 seconds, the engineers had promised. Morrison watches it sail toward the target bunker 40 yards away. At 4.5 seconds, still 15 feet from the target, the T-13 Bino grenade detonates in midair. The explosion rips through the testing range. When the smoke clears, Morrison lies on his back, blood pooling beneath his shredded right arm. He becomes casualty number 17 in what military historians will later call the deadliest American weapon that never killed an enemy soldier. By March 1945, the Bino grenade will have caused 5 premature detonations during testing. 2 men will be dead, 44 others wounded. The weapon designed to make every American soldier as lethal as a major league pitcher will instead achieve a horrifying distinction. It will kill and wound more American personnel than enemy combatants. The final tally: 0 confirmed enemy casualties, 46 American casualties. What Morrison didn't know, what none of the test subjects knew, was that the revolutionary impact-detonating fuse mechanism was fundamentally unstable. The grenade's designers had created a weapon so sensitive that the centrifugal force of throwing it, the vibration of hitting the thrower's hand, even the compression of gripping it too tightly during a fastball throw could trigger premature detonation. But this catastrophe began not with an explosion, but with a simple observation made by an industrial chemist who had never served a day in combat. A man whose lack of military credentials would be held against him by the very officers whose lives he was trying to save. His name was Stanley Lovell, and in 1942, watching American soldiers train with grenades, he noticed something that would lead him down a path of brilliance and disaster. By December 1942, the United States military faced a crisis that no amount of industrial might could solve. American soldiers couldn't throw grenades far enough. The standard issue Mark II pineapple grenade weighed 21 ounces and measured just 2.25 inches in diameter. Its egg-shaped body, with serrated grooves, was designed for maximum fragmentation, but its weight and awkward shape created a deadly problem. The average soldier could throw it only 30 to 35 yards. The grenade's lethal fragmentation radius, 30 yards. The margin for error, essentially 0. Training reports from Fort Benning painted a grim picture. During grenade training exercises in 1942, instructors recorded that 40% of recruits couldn't throw the Mark II beyond its own blast radius. Another 25% could barely reach 40 yards. The military was asking farm boys from Kansas and factory workers from Detroit to master a throwing technique that felt nothing like any ball they'd ever thrown. The statistics got worse in combat. After-action reports from North Africa in late 1942 and early 1943 revealed that German stick grenades, with their 18-inch wooden handles providing leverage, could be thrown 50 to 60 yards. German soldiers were attacking American positions from distances where Americans couldn't effectively respond. The steel hand granite's handle gave German troops a decisive tactical advantage in close-quarters combat. The Army Ordnance Department tried everything. They experimented with different shapes, lighter explosives, smaller casings. Engineers at the Frankfurt Arsenal in Philadelphia developed 11 different prototypes between 1940 and 1943. Each failed for the same reason. Reducing weight meant reducing explosive power. Changing the shape made the grenade unpredictable in flight or difficult to grip under stress. Expert consensus was unanimous. The laws of physics couldn't be cheated. A hand grenade needed enough explosive to be lethal, which meant a certain minimum weight, which meant a limited throwing distance. Colonel Thomas Hayes of the Ordnance Department wrote in a January 1943 memo, "We have reached the theoretical maximum of hand grenade effectiveness. Any attempt to extend throwing distance by modifying weight or shape will compromise lethality. The current Mark II represents the best achievable balance." The stakes escalated with each passing month. Intelligence reports indicated Germany was preparing for the eventual Allied invasion of Europe. Close-quarters combat in French villages and German cities would favor the side with superior grenade warfare capabilities. If American troops couldn't outthrow German grenades, they would die in alleys and bombed out buildings while still trying to close the distance. At the Office of Strategic Services headquarters in Washington, the problem landed on the desk of a man who looked at it from an entirely different angle. While career military officers focused on the grenade itself, Stanley Lovell focused on the soldiers throwing them. Born in 1890, Lovell was a Cornell-educated industrial chemist who had spent his career developing commercial products for the Valspar Corporation. He had never fired a weapon in anger, never attended military academy, never commanded troops. He held no rank, wore no uniform, and had only been recruited to head the OSS Research and Development Division in October 1942 because OSS Director William Wild Bill Donovan specifically wanted an outsider who thought differently than Pentagon bureaucrats. Lovell's lack of military pedigree made him an immediate target of skepticism. "He's a paint chemist playing soldier," one Ordnance Department officer wrote dismissively. But Donovan had given Lovell an extraordinary mandate: develop unconventional weapons and tactics that conventional military minds would never imagine. And in December 1942, watching recruits struggle with grenade training at an OSS facility in Maryland, Lovell had a flash of insight that would lead to both innovation and tragedy. Stanley Platt Lovell stands at the edge of the training field, hands clasped behind his back, watching young men throw grenades with all the grace of toddlers hurling stones. He's 52 years old, wearing a civilian suit that marks him as an outsider among the uniforms. The recruits call him the professor behind his back, and they don't mean it as a compliment. But Lovell isn't watching the grenades. He's watching the men. "Pull the pin, grip it tight, don't throw like a girl." The training sergeant's voice carries across the field. A recruit from Ohio winds up awkwardly, releases. The Mark II wobbles through the air, lands 28 yards away. The sergeant shakes his head. Lovell walks closer. "Sergeant, where are these men from?" "All over, sir. Iowa, Nebraska, New York, California." "Did they play sports, baseball?" The sergeant shrugs. "Most of them played something. Baseball, sure. It's America's game." Lovell watches another throw, this one even worse. The recruit grips the pineapple grenade like he's strangling it, his throwing motion stiff and unnatural. Then Lovell sees it. During lunch break, the same recruit picks up a baseball and fires it 60 yards to his buddy with perfect fluid mechanics. The insight crystallizes. Americans don't know how to throw grenades, but they absolutely know how to throw baseballs. Every young man in America has thrown a baseball. 9-year-olds in sandlots, teenagers in high school. It's muscle memory coded into the American male psyche. The size, the weight, the grip, the release point. A baseball feels natural in a way the Mark II pineapple never will. That night, Lovell sits in his makeshift office in Washington and sketches. Not a new grenade design, a new grenade psychology. What if you didn't try to teach Americans to throw grenades? What if you made grenades that Americans already knew how to throw? He pulls out his measurements. A regulation baseball, 9 to 925 inches in circumference, Weight, 5 to 5.25 ounces. Every American soldier has thrown something this size and weight thousands of times. They can place it accurately at 60 yards without thinking, pure instinct. The next morning, Lovell brings his proposal to the OSS Research and Development Team. His lead engineer, a former MIT professor named Harold Morton, immediately sees the problem. 5 ounces isn't enough explosive to be lethal. You'd need at least 10 ounces of TNT for effective fragmentation. That doubles the weight. Then we use impact detonation, Lovell says. It doesn't need to fragment. It explodes on contact. The concussive force alone will incapacitate. The room goes quiet. Impact detonating grenades are considered too dangerous for field use. Every military in the world uses time delay fuses for exactly this reason: safety. An impact fuse could detonate if dropped, if jostled, if it hit a tree branch. That's not a feature, Stanley. That's suicide, Morton says. Lovell's response is immediate. The current grenade is already suicide. Our men can't throw it far enough to survive their own blast. We're asking them to die because we won't take a risk on a better design. He pauses. So yes, it's dangerous, but what we're doing now is more dangerous. February 1943, Eastman Kodak Corporation headquarters, Rochester, New York. In a basement laboratory normally used for developing photographic chemicals, a small team assembles what will become one of World War II's most controversial weapons. Lovell chose Kodak for a specific reason. They're experts in precision manufacturing of small spherical objects, film canisters, camera components, and they have top-secret clearance from other OSS projects. The company assigns 8 engineers to Project Bino, named after the children's game Beanbag, which the baseball-shaped grenade superficially resembles. The lead designer is Harold Gallagher, a 34-year-old mechanical engineer who has never designed a weapon in his life. "I make cameras," he tells Lovell at their first meeting. "I don't make bombs." "Cameras need precision timing mechanisms," Lovell replies. "So do grenades. You're perfect." The team works in absolute secrecy. The basement lab has guards posted. Engineers sign death penalty secrecy agreements. Even Kodak's CEO doesn't know exactly what's being developed 2 floors below his office. Gallagher's design is elegant and terrifying. A spherical steel body, 9.5 inches in circumference, weighing 12 ounces, slightly heavier than a baseball, but still throwable. Inside, 2 ounces of high-grade TNT, enough for lethal concussive force. The revolutionary element, a 2-stage impact fuse. The thrower pulls a pin, holds the grenade by a safety cap, throws. As the grenade flies, centrifugal force spins off the cap, attached to a 20-inch nylon cord. When the cord fully unwinds, it pulls a secondary arming pin, activating the impact fuse. The grenade is now live. Any hard impact, wall, ground, vehicle, human body, triggers immediate detonation. On paper, it's brilliant. The 20-inch cord ensures the grenade arms mid-flight, far from the thrower's hand. The impact detonation prevents enemies from throwing it back. The baseball shape makes it instinctively throwable. In practice, the first test nearly kills Gallagher. March 12, 1943, a secured field outside Rochester. Gallagher himself insists on making the first throw. He pulls the pin, grips the safety cap, winds up, throws. The cap detaches. The cord unwinds. Gallagher watches the grenade sail 50 yards, far better than any Mark II. It hits the dirt, and nothing. No explosion. He breathes a sigh of relief. Dud round. The team starts walking toward the target to inspect. The grenade detonates 45 seconds later. The delayed blast sends engineers diving for cover. A piece of shrapnel slices through Gallagher's jacket sleeve, missing his arm by inches. What the hell happened? Lovell demands later. Moisture, Gallagher says, his hand still shaking. The impact fuse mechanism absorbed condensation from the humid air, created a delay in the firing pin release. They redesigned the fuse housing, add waterproofing, run 20 more tests. 19 work perfectly. One detonates in midair, but the engineers attribute it to a manufacturing defect. On July 15, 1943, Lovell brings the Bino to Aberdeen Proving Ground for official Army evaluation. He writes in his report, "This device will revolutionize infantry combat. Every American soldier will become a precision grenade operator." The Army Ordnance Department reads his report and responds with 2 words, "That's illegal." July 20th, 1943. Conference Room 4, Army Ordnance Department, Pentagon. Stanley Lovell sits at one end of a massive oak table. At the other end, Colonel Thomas Hayes, 3 majors from Ordnance, and 2 representatives from the Frankfurt Arsenal. Colonel Hayes drops Lovell's report on the table with a dull thud. "Impact detonation," Hayes says flatly. "You're proposing we give American soldiers impact detonating grenades." "Yes, sir." "Do you know why we don't use impact detonation, Mr. Lovell?" The emphasis on Mr. rather than any military rank is deliberate. Lovell doesn't flinch. "Because it's considered too dangerous." "Because it is too dangerous," Hayes says, his voice rising. "A soldier trips carrying this grenade, he's dead. It falls from his belt, he's dead. A piece of shrapnel hits it, his entire squad is dead. We use time delay fuses specifically to prevent accidental detonation." Major Robert Chen, an ordnance expert, jumps in. "Our tests show the Mark II has a failure rate of 0.03%. That's 3 failures per 10,000 grenades. Your tests show, what did you call them? Manufacturing inconsistencies in 5% of samples. That's a failure rate 150 times higher." "Those were early prototypes," Lovell begins. "Early prototypes that nearly killed your lead engineer," Chen interrupts, "according to your own report." The room erupts. Officers talk over each other. Reckless, untested, civilian thinking. Lovell sits quietly, letting the storm rage. He's learned that military men need to vent before they'll listen. Finally, Hayes raises his hand. Silence falls. "Mr. Lovell, I respect your creativity. The OSS does valuable work, but this crosses a line. We cannot issue American soldiers a weapon more likely to kill them than the enemy." "With respect, Colonel, we already have." Lovell pulls out a folder. "North Africa, November 1942. Operation Torch. After-action reports document 14 instances of American casualties from Mark II grenades that didn't clear the throwing distance. Soldiers died because they couldn't throw our grenade far enough." He slides photographs across the table. Training accidents, friendly fire incidents. 18 Americans killed in 6 months by our own grenades. Not malfunctions, just physics. The grenade works exactly as designed, but the design doesn't match the capability of our soldiers. Hayes studies the photographs, his jaw tight. "The Bino solves this," Lovell continues. "Testing shows soldiers with no special training can throw at 60 yards. Some reach 75 yards. That's double the Mark II distance. Yes, there's risk, but there's risk in what we're doing now." "The risk is unacceptable," Hayes says. "Then improve it," Lovell shoots back. "You have the best ordnance engineers in the world. Take our design, fix the problems, make it reliable, but don't reject it because it's different." Major Chen leans forward. "Even if we solve the reliability issues, there's a tactical problem. Impact detonation means it could hit a branch, a wall, anything. The explosion becomes unpredictable." "That's not a bug, Major. That's a feature. German soldiers can't pick it up and throw it back. They can't defuse it. It hits their position and detonates instantly. No time to react." The room falls silent. Officers exchange glances. General Marcus Wheeler, who's been quiet until now, speaks up. He's wearing the combat infantryman badge, meaning he's actually fought, unlike the other officers in the room. How many did you make? Kodak produced 50 test units, Lovell says. Make 10,000, Wheeler says. We'll do full field trials. Aberdeen proving ground. Real soldiers, not engineers. If it works, we'll issue them for the European invasion. If it doesn't, we burn them and forget this conversation happened. The room erupts again. Hayes objects. Chen argues. Wheeler cuts them off. Gentlemen, we're planning to land 150,000 men on French beaches in the next 12 months. Those men will fight through hedgerows, villages, and cities. Close quarters combat. The side that wins the grenade war wins Europe. I don't care if Mr. Lovell has never worn a uniform. If his weapon gives our boys an advantage, I want it tested properly. He looks at Lovell. You'll work with Aberdeen. Military supervision, proper protocols. You get your field trial, but you do it our way. If you're enjoying this story of innovation and tragedy, hit subscribe and the notification bell. Military history isn't just about victories. Sometimes it's about the failures that taught us what not to do. March 1944. Aberdeen Proving Ground, Maryland. The first batch of 2,500 T-13 Bino grenades arrives in wooden crates marked Experimental, Handle with Care. Captain James Bradford oversees the testing program. He's selected 60 soldiers from various infantry divisions, deliberately choosing men with different athletic backgrounds. Farm boys who've never played organized sports. City kids who played stickball in Brooklyn. High school baseball stars. He wants to know if Lovell's theory holds. Does being American and knowing baseball really make you a better grenade thrower? The first week's results are astounding. Average throwing distance, 58 yards. 3 soldiers exceed 70 yards. Even the worst performers manage 45 yards, 15 yards better than the Mark II. Accuracy improves dramatically. One private from Nebraska places 10 consecutive throws within a 3-foot circle at 50 yards. It's like muscle memory. The Nebraska private, James Morrison, tells Bradford, I don't think about it. My arm just knows what to do. Bradford's official report to the Pentagon, dated March 10, 1944, reads, The T-13 demonstrates significant improvement in throwing distance and accuracy. Soldiers require minimal training to achieve proficiency. Recommend expanded field trials. But then the problems begin. March 18, 1944. Morrison is testing grenade number 247. He pulls the pin, executes a perfect throw. The grenade detonates 4 seconds into flight, 15 feet above ground, 40 yards downrange. Shrapnel tears through both his arms. He survives but loses partial use of his right hand. The investigation reveals the fuse armed prematurely, likely due to excessive centrifugal force from Morrison's powerful throwing motion. He had been a semi-pro pitcher before the war. His fastball approach generated more spin than the fuse mechanism could handle. Engineers add friction dampers to the fuse mechanism. Testing resumes. April 3, 1944. Private Leonard Chen grips the Bino too tightly during his windup. The pressure triggers the safety cap to detach in his hand. The arming cord pulls. The grenade is live before he releases it. It impacts the ground 3 feet in front of him and detonates instantly. Chen dies within minutes. 2 nearby soldiers suffer severe injuries. The second investigation uncovers a fundamental design flaw. Soldiers trained in baseball naturally grip the ball firmly during the windup, building tension before release. But the Bino's safety cap must be held loosely, or the cap separates prematurely. The grenade's greatest strength, feeling like a baseball, becomes its fatal weakness. More modifications, stronger cap retention, clearer instructions, hold loosely, do not grip like a baseball. But how do you tell Americans not to throw a baseball-shaped object like a baseball? Testing continues through May 1944. Of 2,642 Bino grenades thrown at Aberdeen, 274 failed to detonate, a 10% failure rate. More critically, 5 more grenades detonate prematurely. One kills Corporal David Martinez instantly. Another severely injures Lieutenant Robert O'Brien, who loses his left arm below the elbow when a grenade explodes during his wind-up motion. The casualty list grows. 2 dead, 44 wounded. 0 enemy combatants killed. The Bino has the distinction of being the only American weapon in World War II with a 100% friendly fire casualty rate. In June 1944, despite the problems, the Army orders the full production run of 10,000 units. Military leadership, preparing for D-Day, desperately wants any advantage in close quarters combat. Engineers at Eastman Kodak work around the clock, producing grenades with improved fuses and reinforced safety mechanisms. But D-Day comes and goes on June 6, 1944. The Bino isn't ready. By July, as American forces fight through French hedgerows, exactly the close quarters combat Lovell envisioned, the Bino remains stateside, too unreliable for combat deployment. In March 1945, a final field trial is conducted in Europe with the improved fuses. The results are marginally better, but still unacceptable. Of 300 throws, 12 grenades detonate prematurely. The improvement isn't enough. The weapon remains too dangerous for combat use. On March 15, 1945, General Dwight Eisenhower's headquarters issues Directive 347. The T-13 Bino grenade is hereby rejected for combat deployment. All units are to be returned to stateside facilities for destruction. Stanley Lovell receives the news in his OSS office in Washington. He sits at his desk, staring at the casualty reports. 2 dead, 44 wounded, 16 men with permanent disabilities. The numbers haunt him. His assistant, Helen Crawford, finds him there hours later. "It was a good idea," she says quietly. "Good ideas don't kill the people they're supposed to protect," Lovell replies. But there's a bitter irony to the story. The fundamental concept, making grenades that matched American throwing instincts, wasn't wrong. Post-war analysis would prove Lovell right on the basic physics. Spherical grenades with baseball-like dimensions could be thrown significantly farther with better accuracy. The problem wasn't the shape. It was the impact detonation fuse. The mechanism that made the grenade revolutionary also made it lethal to its users. The very feature Lovell fought hardest to include became the weapon's fatal flaw. In 1946, the Army Ordnance Department began development of the M26 grenade, spherical, 2.5 inches in diameter, weighing 16 ounces, basically a baseball with a time delay fuse. It entered service in 1952 during the Korean War, eventually evolving into the M67 grenade still used by American forces today. The M67, spherical, throwable, safe. Everything the Bino should have been, minus the impact detonation. Lovell's vision, stripped of his fatal overreach, became standard, but he never got credit for it. The official Army history of grenade development doesn't mention the Bino trials. The casualties were classified. The project was erased, except in the memories of men like James Morrison, who spent the rest of his life with limited use of his right hand. Or the families of Leonard Chen and David Martinez, who were told their sons died in training accidents without further details. The Bino killed more Americans than it ever could have killed Germans. But it also taught military designers a crucial lesson about innovation. Sometimes the difference between brilliant and catastrophic is a matter of knowing when to stop improving something. The story of the Bino grenade reminds us that military innovation walks a razor's edge between genius and disaster. If you want more deep dives into forgotten military history, subscribe to Last Words and check out our video on the Davis gun, another brilliant weapon that failed spectacularly. Stanley Platt Lovell died in 1979 at age 88, largely unknown outside intelligence circles. His obituary in the New York Times mentioned his work as a wartime science administrator without detailing the Bino or dozens of other OSS innovations he developed. In his unpublished memoirs, discovered by his grandson in 2003, Lovell wrote about the Bino project just once. I believed then, and still believe, that the concept was sound. A grenade that Americans could throw instinctively would save lives. But I was seduced by the elegance of impact detonation. I thought I was eliminating a problem, enemies throwing grenades back. Instead, I created a greater problem. The men who died at Aberdeen died because I couldn't accept that good enough was better than perfect. That lesson cost 2 lives and 44 injuries. I carry those numbers with me every day. The Bino exists today only in military museums and private collections. Perhaps 300 units survived the 1945 destruction order. They're inert, their explosive fillings replaced with sand. They sell at military auctions for $800 to $1,200, curiosities from a failed experiment. But Lovell's core insight that Americans throw baseballs better than egg-shaped objects proved correct. The M26 grenade, introduced in 1952, used a spherical design inspired partly by analysis of the Bino trials. The M67, which replaced the M26 in 1968, refined the concept further. Today's M67 weighs 14 ounces and measures 2.5 inches in diameter, not quite baseball-sized, but close enough that soldiers' natural throwing mechanics apply. Average throwing distance for the M67, 35 to 40 yards. Better than the Mark II, not as far as the Bino, but infinitely safer. Since its introduction 57 years ago, the M67 has a premature detonation rate of 0.01%, 3 confirmed incidents in millions of throws. Colonel James Morrison, the Nebraska private who lost function in his right hand, lived until 2006. In a 2003 interview with a military historian, he reflected on his experience. Was I angry? Hell yes. I volunteered to test grenades, and one exploded in midair because the design was flawed. But I also saw the Mark II kill men at Fort Benning because they couldn't throw it far enough. Both grenades failed us. At least with the Bino, they were trying to fix the problem. The Army's mistake wasn't developing it. Their mistake was rushing it to production before it was ready. The Bino's failure taught the military establishment a crucial lesson. Innovation requires patience. The pressure to deploy new weapons during wartime creates catastrophic shortcuts. The Bino went from concept to field trial in 14 months, far too fast for a weapon with revolutionary new technology. Modern weapons development takes years, sometimes decades. The current Enhanced Tactical Multipurpose ETMP grenade, in development since 2016, still hasn't reached full deployment. Because military leaders remember what happens when you rush innovation. They remember the Bino. 2 men died so that lesson could be learned. 44 others carry the scars. Their sacrifice wasn't glorious. It wasn't heroic, but it was necessary. Sometimes the price of progress is paid by the people trying to create it.